all of the tunes that we play that we call traditional, you know, they were written by somebody, and a lot of those people were likely immigrants to the US as well, whether they were you know, European or African immigrants. You know, so here I am, an immigrant, and I feel like that's part of the tradition, really, is, you know, offering tunes and you know, yeah, someone had to write them, so those are my ones. Yeah.
Can you tell us, you know, you're from New Zealand. How did you get into playing American old-time music? Where'd that come from?
Yeah, well, my parents had records, and they were folk musicians, so I had a lot of fiddle music in the house growing up. And actually, when I was 9 years old, I kind of joined their band, sort of, playing electric bass, and moved into a house bus with them, and we travelled around itinerantly in New Zealand, playing sort of folk music, a lot of fiddle music, and doing kind of educational shows in schools about music. And so my first experiences learning about music and playing music were with my parents, but a lot of it was most like Scottish and Irish, and my dad was kind of interested in bluegrass music, and that was where I first heard it, was with him and the tapes that he had. And so I kind of got into bluegrass music when I was a teenager, but it took me a fair while after that to discover old-time music. Wasn't until I came traveling to the US and came over here as a 17-year-old to go to like a fiddle camp, and that's where I first saw old-time music, actually. So yeah, that was my first sort of exposure to it. So it took me a fair while, but yeah, but we got there.
Were there specific albums or specific artists or specific players around at the time who you drew inspiration from, or who really got you more into the music?
Yeah. Like my parents were huge influences on me when I was pre-teen and a teenager. I thought my dad was about as good a fiddle player as there could be in the world at that point in time, which is awesome. I kind of love that. And he's a great fiddle player. Well, they're both great fiddle players, but I was like particularly into, because my dad was into American music, you know, I was particularly into what he was doing as a teenager and admiring him. I went to a fiddle camp, so I kind of definitely came to a lot of American music through fiddle camps, which was advantageous. I think that's part of the reason why I was able to come across American music, because of American teachers visiting New Zealand. And one of the teachers that really inspired me there was a fiddler from Boston named Hanneke Castle, and she's a Scottish fiddler. It's Cape Breton and sort of her own style of like American Scottish kind of. And that whole sort of Alistair Fraser fiddle camp scene was where I sort of started to get into. So I came over and went to Alistair's Valley of the Moon fiddle camp in California, and that was, I met Bruce Molsky there and Brittany Haas, and Tatiana was like a 12-year-old girl, Tatiana Hargraves, and she was already playing awesome, and her brother was already playing awesome, and Tristan and Tashina Claridge. So those people were like definitely my intro and gateway kind of musicians.
So was there...
albums. I mean, like I was definitely really into. I was really into Bela Fleck. This is going to be like the weirdest origin story for old-time music, because I came at it from like not only geographically so far away, but also musically. It's been a whole journey for me to get to old-time music, and there's lots of reasons why. I've ended up being like mostly inspired by this particular music, but it's been a whole journey to get there. But I was really into Bela Fleck and like bluegrass music, Tony Rice and Sam Bush, and the first like old-time album that I was really into was Brittany Haas's Oldtime fiddle album. So I was probably 16 or something when I first heard that, and I thought that was really cool. But then I was like really into bluegrass, and then I studied jazz at university, and I got completely burnt out on like university music and like improvising, and that was when I first visited Clifftop, and it was a breath of fresh air to be playing music with people and not have the pressure of the social pressure of like how cool is your solo going to be, and that was one of the defining moments for me, really.
So is there much of an old-time jam scene in New Zealand, or where did you get your tunes?
Yeah.
When you started learning old-time music.
Yeah, well, a lot of it has been really in the last 5 to 10 years for me, because I remember being given a CD of old-time tunes by this guy Don Milne in New Zealand, and Don's like one of the only guys in New Zealand who's like really deep into old-time music and plays old-time banjo. He's great. He builds banjos, and he's definitely like really the only guy that I can think of in New Zealand who's kind of trying to expose young people to old-time music. And he made me like a mixed CD of tunes with like, I remember like Rafe Stefanini, and like there was some Molsky stuff on there, and all sorts of stuff on there, like a mixtape. And that was one of the first like things that I listened to with old-time music in there. Where were we going with that? What was the question?
Where did you get your tunes?
Yeah, where did I get my tunes? Yeah. So, really, in the last 5 to 10 years, I've just been trawling a bunch of source recordings, and also going and learning from people and playing with people and picking up tunes in jam sessions, and finding people around here in Tennessee that I can play with, and but mostly it's kind of I'll hear about a certain fiddler that I haven't heard of before, and or someone around the area has told me, oh, this person or that person, and then I'll look them up and try and find out a bunch of information and learn a few tunes from that person and kind of try and fit them into the puzzle of where everything's going. So it's definitely a journey, and a puzzle is a good way to kind of describe it. I think a good analogy for me is finding where that person was in time and place, and how they kind of fit into the tapestry of this music. And so I've just been kind of doing my own little research on Slippery Hill and the YouTube. But honestly, that's where I've gotten most of my tunes from. Yeah, this one's fun. I kind of got into learning some tunes from Hiram Stamper last year, and it's kind of ties into a little bit of learning music from around this particular area in Kentucky, in Middle Tennessee. And there's this crazy video of him playing this tune on YouTube, and it took me ages to figure out. But I also kind of was looking a little bit at the potential of playing tunes by yourself and opening up the form that way, being able to add beats and take them away kind of at your own whim. And I like that idea, and it's something that I've been kind of playing around with, playing by myself a little bit. So this one's a good one for those kind of ideas. But it's The Last of Sizemore from Hiram Stamper. Yeah.
New Zealand,
Yeah.
Australia, over there, but you moved to America, actually. You live in Nashville, Tennessee now.
Mhm.
How did How did that come about, and what's that been like?
Yeah, I moved here 3.5 years ago, and it was a really big move. Quite daunting to move to, the place where there's just so many great musicians, and professionally try to build myself up here as a musician as well. So it's been a big journey, and there's been some really tough times. Starting over again as a mid-20s person, but ultimately I kind of knew that it was it was going to be the right move, and I'm feeling more and more comfortable here all the time. But it's also been a really exciting move, and it's been really great for my playing too. I think it's really inspired me to push myself. I was living in Australia before I moved here, and I lived there for 10 years actually, and I had bands over there, and as big as Australia is, and it's geographically it's a big place. It's quite a bit smaller population-wise than the US. So there's only a certain amount of stuff that you can do as a traditional kind of American musician, or playing that kind of music. There is just a limited amount of stuff that you're actually going to be able to do over there. So once I was seeing that there wasn't going to be, there was still plenty of stuff to do, but it wasn't going to be like a lifelong pursuit, and it wasn't going to push me. That was definitely part of the impetus to get myself over here and really dive into the big pool. Yeah.
Definitely. But you also, in addition to playing old-time tunes, you also write your own tunes.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that's been my way of kind of dipping my foot into American music in a really authentic way, because one of the things that I've been exploring within myself, I suppose I tend to overthink things and feel a little self-conscious, and so part of that, the expression of that has been that I feel like the most authentic thing that I can offer is something that I've written, and hopefully brings a little something of my place and my experiences as a New Zealander and someone who lived in Australia to the music. And the music that I've played and looked at. So so I really feel that a really strong urge to write music, and I definitely feel like offering up this sort of latest project that I've done, which is like all my own music, was like the best way for me to kind of put something out there and feel really authentic about it. But the longer that I'm here, and the more American, like the more traditional music that I play, the more comfortable I feel about putting that out there too. So that's my journey with that. This one's called Old Sage Friend, and it's from the string band Gribble, York and Lusk. I've been kind of getting into John Lusk's fiddle playing, and it's again kind of exploring the music of Middle Tennessee. So Old Sage Friend.
That's a sweet tune, man.
Yeah, I really like that. It's kind of, yeah. It's like simple, but it's got some unique kind of little characteristics to it.